Hey everybody, this is Joe Moriarty. Welcome to the Training-Led Growth Podcast. I had a really good conversation today with Greg Armour, who's the EVP and Chief Revenue Officer at Gryphon Networks. Awesome sales technology, sales enablement technology, and he's a really seasoned sales leader. We got into sales process, medic, sales motions, how to keep your sales teams on track and motivated. It was really a good conversation. So please let me know what you think. Please feel free to reach out, comment, and happy to answer any of your questions. Welcome to another edition of the Training-Led Growth Podcast. I have an awesome guest today. I'm joined by Greg Armour, who's Executive Vice President of Gryphon Networks. CRO. And so I wanted to just welcome Greg. Thanks, Greg, for joining me today.
Hi, thanks, Joe. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate your time. You have a really, really good background, which I wanted to dig into. A lot of our listeners and folks that, tune into the podcast here on LinkedIn or where we stream it and send it is a lot of it's a training-led growth, but how it relates to revenue and how it relates to sales and training sales teams. And so you've got quite a career starting back with, looks like Mass 360 and FiberLink in sales, and then getting up into sales management and sales leadership, and then Avaya, then Senior Vice President Worldwide Mobility Sales at Tango in the Philadelphia area. And then BitSite, I think company that a lot of us are familiar with in technology, head of North American sales, enterprise sales, and that's led you now to Gryphon Networks. So what kind of guy you look coming out, also a West Virginia, University of West Virginia alumni. So coming out of school, what got you interested in kind of sales in general? Was it the first thing you thought about, or how'd you get the career started?
You make me sound old after all that history. I was having flashbacks.
You're getting there, buddy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I think that I always knew I wanted to go into sales. I got a degree in sociology and business administration, which is the study of human beings, and obviously a business degree to understand the business side. It was important to me while in college that I knew I wanted to be in sales, because I put myself through college by doing a couple different things. One, I ran my own painting company, and I had to go out and sell myself to go get jobs. And I was a terrible business owner, Joe. I charged everybody the same price. So I don't care how big the house was in the summertime, it was $2,000. I don't care how big the house was in the wintertime, it was $2,000. Everything was just $2,000, because I knew I could undercut like College Pro or anybody else, right? So $2,000, I'd paint 4 houses. I was good to go for a semester. Did the same thing on the inside. I telemarketed and sold LSAT courses and GMAT courses and GRE courses over the telephone to college kids. And I quickly learned that every time I got a credit card from a college kid, I was paid $100, for setting up that course. And I said, all right, so the more I set up, the more money I made. And I was like, this is an easy job. Let's do this.
Awesome.
So that's how I knew.
That's awesome. So started as a rep, right? You started selling technology, started selling rep. When did you start to realize you wanted to kind of move into like the coaching role or more of a leadership role in sales?
Interesting enough, most people who know me would say, oh, Armour's the best sales guy I know. And I always laugh and I say, no, I'm not. You guys are a hell of a lot better at sales than I am. I think that my whole career and everything I've ever done has been more around coaching and leading. I coached baseball for my son. I coached him in golf. I coached, even when I was a little kid, I refereed soccer. I coached soccer. I ran soccer camps. Just even being a father, right, is all about coaching. And early on in my career, I had children young. It was an easy fit for me. I love sales. I liked the different ways that you can perform in sales. And I liked using data. I liked using process. I liked using methodologies. And I like solving problems, right? And helping other people see different avenues and coming up with creative ideas to move things along, right? And I felt that Coaching and leadership are two words that are different than management. And so I built my career around those two things, I would say.
So good. I have a question for you. So do you think that salespeople are born salespeople, or do you think you can take people and through coaching and training kind of create great salespeople?
I think both, right? So I think that, people buy from people they like, and you have to have you can't teach work ethic, right? You can't teach relationship building, right? You've got to have some sort of skill set there. But, nowadays, technology and easier ways to take a good salesperson and make them great is a different conversation, right? There are good salespeople and there are great salespeople. And anybody who knows me knows I say both of those, right? And what you always want to do is remember there's an individual involved, but there's a technique, right? There's a method, there's a methodology, there's a process, there's a motion that you can add to good salespeople to help them become great, right? To figure out where they lack, what traits a great salesperson have, and work on them. It's like taking an A player and making them an A+, right? The way that you do that is you just refine some skill sets that make them more money, right? It's all about showing salespeople how they can make more money.
Yes. I love the word you use, motion, that sales motion. I think that that's a good describer of that. Where did you start to learn about that? Or at what point in your career did you start to realize there was a motion or a process that if you follow that, you get better results?
I've been through a lot of different trainings in my life. A lot of different programs out there. Everybody's been through them, right? What I learned when I learned MEDDIC, which is one of my favorite trainings, and my methodology that I instilled at all the companies we just talked about. MEDDIC allows sales teams to understand the playbook that they need in order to close a deal.
Right.
And a methodology is one thing. And then everybody has a process, right? Think of a process as what you see in Salesforce, the stages you need to move forward to close, right? But that process doesn't work without emotion. So the motion is how you keep your deal moving, right? How you keep building, what keeps people interested, what allows them to become more engaged, right? How do you stop things from stalling? And so that motion has to work in hand with the process, which is all being driven by a methodology, right? Mm-hmm. And we use here at Gryphon, we use MEDDIC, right? That drives the process and a motion that continues to keep the sales cycle moving along.
So did you have some good mentors or coaching kind of in your career on the way up, or do you feel like a lot of this was, you kind of trying to research it, learn on your own? How did you come to all of this kind of knowledge where you are now?
Yeah, I think I've had a lot of different engagement from leaders, right? I mean, everybody picks up something from people they've worked with. And I've had the pleasure of working with some talented people, especially on the executive level, right? I've worked for some really powerful, successful CEOs who've had, great success in their career that, I've always tried to attach myself to. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that I learned in my career at BitSight from the executive team there, from a Sean McConnon to a Tom Turner, right? There's a lot of things that I learned from my years at Maz 360, from Ed McCrossan and from Jim Sheward, right? And, there's a lot that I learned from Al Sabloy and Chris Mazzatessa at Tango. And when you take all of their personalities and everything that they were good at, I guess you get me, right? And then my flavor of the things that I learned throughout all of that. But always good mentorship, always good leadership, always, attaching myself to an executive team with really good vision and strength, right? Who've had major success, massive exits, right? So
talk to me about Gryphon now. So you left BitSight. You've come into Gryphon Networks now. Tell us about Gryphon and kind of the makeup of the sales team as it is today.
Yeah, I think, Gryphon is a 20-year-old company with an excellent legacy base of technology and customers, right? And Gryphon has a very unique path forward from where it was for the last 20 years and to what our next 20 years look like. It's, for me, coming to Gryphon was exciting because I get to take everything that I love about what I do in sales, right? And I get to give it back to sales leaders with technology. My passion has always been sales. And now I get to help other sales leaders leverage technology that allows them to improve their sales teams and increase their revenue. I just imagine having technology that you and I never had that allows sales teams, instead of, we all have the same problem. How many of your people at 100% of plan, right? And how do you get them there? Well, what if you had technology that, can get you from your average 40% of people at plan to 70% of plan?
Yeah.
Right. And our industry is somewhat archaic in leveraging technology, but, the utilization of AI and machine learning and, controlling the gap of visibility that companies have is what excites me about Gryphon. Gryphon to me is giving technology back to salespeople so they can beat their revenue goals and make more money, right? And that's what excites me about Gryphon.
So Gryphon is a sales technology that's going to help salespeople execute. Tell me a little bit more. Give me a little more like behind the scenes. So why do your customers start to use Gryphon?
Yeah, so I think there are 4 areas of pain when I'm, from a sales leader standpoint, that I'm always concerned about, right? And the first area of pain that I see is always the ramping of a salesperson, right? How quickly can I get our sales rep onboarded, understanding our tech, and selling it, right? Pitching it, selling it, and running a sales cycle, right? Understanding the methodology, the process, the motion, teaching them all that, getting them on board, and getting them to produce revenue faster, right? That's real revenue in their pocket as well as the company's pocket.
So getting them smart enough, dangerous enough to get out there to understand product, get them ready to sell, get them ready to go.
Absolutely. 100% training, right? Training. I'm a big proponent of training, right? Everybody uses sports analogies and sales, fortunately or unfortunately, but, you don't become the best at who you are because you don't train. And, our Sunday, right, whether it's a golf match, a PGA Tour golf match, or a football game, or a college football game, they train all week just to get to that one moment. And we've got to train all week just to get to the sales call we're about to have, because that is our moment, right? I'm not a professional athlete. I happen to be a professional leader, right? And I take that seriously. And the only way to get everybody on the same page is to constantly keep them trained. So it's not just the onboarding, but the ongoing training of your salesperson. Because if you think about it, salespeople are the asset of the business. They're our IP, right? You don't want to turn over great salespeople. You want to continue to get them better, and you want to make your entire organization better, and you want to protect your asset. And the way to do that is to keep them finely tuned, right? So the first step of that would be training, right? And that pain exists for every company out there. There's another pain that companies have, which is top of funnel, right? Which is how much more opportunity can I continue to add into the top of my funnel to keep my sales team healthy with opportunity? Yep. Everybody knows ratios, right? We used to call it the grinder, right? Yep. How many appointments do I have? How many calls do I have to make to get people on the phone, to get appointments, to get to proposals, to get to sales, yep. Right? And if you didn't know your ratio, you couldn't be successful. How do you run your business knowing what you need to do? Yep. And so technology exists now that helps add more business to the top of the funnel, which creates more opportunity, which generates more proposals, which generates more sales. Yep. Right? So that's a pain. And then a third pain is what we call deal progression, right? Which is what I call the visibility gap of all leadership, which is you can see your salesperson and you can train them up just like we talked about. Yep. And the prospect customer that you're going after because you can use data to figure out who's the right buyer. What you can't see is what takes place during that entire sales cycle. And so you use one-on-ones and you use, you jump on different calls, you help your sales rep through the process, you build relationships, but more of it's ad hoc. Yeah. And, being able to give real visibility into that gap of what takes place from when an opportunity is created to when it's closed. Great sales leaders will be able to make great salespeople when they have better insight into that process, so they can coach the person through that process, which allows them to sell faster and sell more, right? That's a really big problem. And then the last piece of it is, we want to be able to make sure that when you sell technology or you sell your product, that your customer becomes an expert in it, right? Like a black belt in karate. And so you want to be able to take technology to help scale your CSO organization, to onboard your customer, get them using the technology, get them so advanced in it that they want to buy more, right? Because they've used more and they become better at it, and you become more sticky so that your retention rate is higher. And your ability to upsell comes sooner and is probably at a larger margin. And so those 4 areas of pain are where Gryphon is focusing our technology around.
I love it. You're obviously speaking our language as well. We're talking here on the Training-Led Growth podcast. So that's huge stuff. I love the last one, customer, giving the customer a great experience and using the products in which you're selling and getting them to be really expert users. I think it's a huge focus of ours, obviously, that we like to do. But those pain points are awesome. Time to ramp and training, top of funnel lead gen to keep it all going. And by the way, 2 things interesting, Greg, I'm going to go back to. 1, I too owned a painting company when I was in college. I thought about that as you're saying that. But then 2, the metrics. I mean, we're all on the grinder, right? And I also sold door to door in college. So I'd knock on doors and sell these coupon books. But I knew you got to knock on 100 doors to make 10 sales. And that was it. It was like, that's what you got to do. So we've all as sales leaders translated that to the deal progression, to the top of the funnel, and then where it is, and then solving that deal progression problem. Let me ask you so I love all of those pain points. I live all of those pain points with Raven 360. But we also like to talk about that same stuff too. So I really want to ask you a question about, because I love your medic, how kind of passionate you are about that and how useful it is, because we also try to always find the pain, find the economic buyer, find the decision process. And part of what happens in our world is that these buyers are so much further down the road. It's hard to figure out exactly where they are in the process. I mean, by the time you get let's call it a marketing qualified lead or a demo request, and you get on the phone with somebody, I can't tell you how many times you're on the phone with an executive and the first thing they say to you is, just tell me how much it costs.
Yeah.
And it drives me nuts because wait a minute, hold on, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, right? But so how do you deal with that? Because you obviously with medic and with your motion, what do you teach your reps on that? When somebody gets on the phone in a demo and they're just like, tell me how much it costs. How do you help your reps on that situation?
That's an excellent question, Joe, for sure. I think we all have that, right? Our buyers are a lot more advanced these days, right? I think 50% of our buyers know what they're doing prior to them even getting on a call with us. They've understood the technology. There's so much tech at their fingertips and so much reporting that they can go back and look at to get them more educated before they even get on the phone with us. I always tell our sales reps and our sales leaders that we need to slow down before we can speed up. And I promise you, if you slow down now, the back end of your process will go faster, right? And I also talk a lot about double clicking, right? That's a great question. Let me ask you a few more questions, right? Salespeople are great when they use what they have, 2 ears and 1 mouth. They listen and then they respond, in a manner that allows them to gain some valuable information from who they're talking to, and more importantly, be able to give more valuable information back to them, right? In order to do so, you just have to hit the pause button for a second, understand what problems they are trying to solve, go back and relate it to, double clicking and going a little bit deeper on some questioning that puts them into a motion that says, okay, I understand what it is. let me help you understand how we solve that. Let me take that to the next level and show you how our technology does what you want it to do. And then take it to another level that says, why don't you play with it internally and make sure it fits your needs and see what we have to tweak so that when it's time for you to go live, you've got a live product. Yeah. And so you slow down, you speed up toward the end because they've gotten more used to it. And that other 50% that they didn't get before they got on the call, they get toward the end, right?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I think a lot of people will take a lot from that, and slow down to speed up is, when I was a younger salesperson, I struggled with that because you're always like, got to move fast, get it out there, try to get this deal. And you find yourself, but if it's practice, I think, right? I think you have to practice slowing down a little bit and saying, well, let me understand your business a little bit more. Let me ask you just a couple of questions. I think this goes back to Sandler training, which I'm sure you've done some Sandler in your day. It's like building, I think they call it building the contract with the customer, the prospect, which is saying like, hey, if I have a couple more questions for you, call 3. I'm going to give you 3 more questions. And if we can talk through those 3 questions, then we'll get some better answers. But it's in the moment, coaching and training your team, your sales team, to be able to do that takes practice, right? I mean, I think that's where you're coaching.
Yeah, I agree with you, Joe. I think that, and you have different levels of salespeople in all organizations. You have, newer salespeople who are getting started in their career, and you have seasoned sales professionals that are running lengthy sales cycles and more complex sales cycles. Medic, to me, is the best way to get people to understand to slow down. If you have a playbook that you need to follow and you know that you need answers, it's your map, right? Can you just say how much does something cost and understand who's the decision maker, right? Who's the economic buyer? Who's your champion? Who's going to help you? Do you understand what it is they're even trying to buy from a metric standpoint? Do you get, after they say yes, what their process is in order to get a deal done? No, you don't get any of that, right? And so if you follow a methodology like Medic, it will allow you to slow down because you don't have the answers to your map to get through, to a closed sale. Way too many times as sales leaders, we see deals stall, at identify need, right? Or a stage 3, gaining interest or opportunity generated or whatever it is, right? You haven't identified any pain, and deals stall between stages 1 and stage 3, and salespeople want to know why. Well, I can't get the guy on the phone. Well, it's normally because you gave them too much information, right? And you didn't gather any of the information that you needed in order to keep the motion, right, moving in the process.
So when you're in a motion with a rep, you're in a coaching session, whether it's like a pipeline review or a one-on-one or what you're doing, do you try to identify, are you super strict about the phase of which they're at in the motion? And if they're not, do your reps know it's going to be a problem with Greg?
I wouldn't say that my reps would know that it's a problem with Greg. I think it's a problem with them, right? I think that they realize that they're lacking information that they're gonna need in order to get what they want to get, which is a sale, right? Yeah. I manage the 5 pillars, right? And everybody who's ever worked with me knows that I'm very big on 5 pillars, and they are activity, they are pipeline build, they are deal progression, they are quota attainment, and then we use a CRM hygiene, right? You need to make sure that the data that you have is accurate so that we can use the data to make better decisions to help you as a sales rep, right? As leaders, real leaders, our job is to remove obstacles and give everything we can back to our salespeople to make them successful.
Yeah.
At Gryphon, one of my favorite things about being at Gryphon is, out of all those great sales leaders that we talked about earlier that I've worked with, every single one of them had a common trait. And their common trait was they would ask me toward the end of every quarter, Joe, as you do in a CEO position, which is, how can I help you? How can I help you make sure you bring in that deal or you make your number, right? And this works. And I know when it works, when everybody says, get me Gryphon for our sales team, right? Because then I know that our technology is allowing salespeople and sales leaders to control the visibility gap and become more professional, throughout their sales process. And that's huge.
Awesome pillars too: activity, pipeline growth, deal progression, quota attainment, CRM hygiene. And from a leadership or a coaching perspective, you have your team and you've got, managers and certain folks underneath you. But what do you do if, you have a rep that's just not hitting one of the pillars? What's your how do you handle it?
Interesting. It depends on what the pillar is. What I always tell our sales teams is, listen, I can help you through anything. I can give you guidance. So I can leverage technology for you to, understand where your shortfalls are. And we can leverage video and training, modules to continue to get you better. But I can't put in the effort for you, right? I cannot make the dials for you. I cannot send the emails for you. As long as you have high activity, the rest of it can be solved, right? You can leverage technology to solve, some of the shortfalls. You can leverage technology to gain better visibility into what's going wrong, right? You can leverage technology to understand how to fish where the fish are, right? Yep. You can leverage technology to provide more data back to your leadership teams to see where shortfalls are coming. And you can leverage that information to train up your organization on where things need to be resolved, right? So if you use those pillars in the methodology and a process, you can get somebody from point A to point B. But you can't, they need to have the will and they need to have the activity in order to get.
It's so funny. So you use will and activity, and I use this a lot, or I've used this with my sales teams a lot, which I say, look, there's two things that you can control 100%. One of them is your attitude. The other one is your effort.
There you go.
You can control those two. You can have a great attitude where you want to learn and you want to be coached and you want to get better and you want to look, we're all going to have no's. We're all going to get some doors slammed in your face, and it's that's okay. You got to have still got to be able to have a positive attitude to keep moving forward. And then two is your effort. You can control your effort. We all can control how hard we work, but if you control those two things, and then what you said, which giving them the pillars that they know they can work on, and then giving them, with Gryphon, the 4 areas of pain that you guys specifically solve. I mean, that's a pretty good playbook. That's a pretty good, and then put the medic process in motion. Sounds like you're going to have a pretty high powered sales org.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had a lot of success for sure.
Well, listen, Greg, Gryphon Networks sounds like an amazing technology, amazing company. I encourage anyone to go out to gryphonnetworks.com and learn more about how this technology works. It's really incredible stuff. And then Greg, you're out on LinkedIn at Greg Armour. So if anybody, I'm sure, wants to reach out, and you can find it on LinkedIn, right? Or probably on the public website. You can get in touch with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. We encourage it, right? Make sure you're trying to hone in your game, right? Make sure you go back to your leadership and tell them what you need to be successful, because they lack that visibility into what it is that you need.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Well, Greg, love to talk again. We'll schedule another one down the road, but this has been an awesome introduction to you and an awesome introduction to Gryphon Networks. And thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.